One of the properties I know about kites are that I have exactly one set of congruent angles. And so in this first diagram, I'm given a kite. I can see that I have two sides that are congruent and they're next to each other, and then two more sides that are congruent and are next to each other. That's what makes a kite a kite. So I'm asked to find the missing angles, which are angles D and F. Well, remember, there's going to be one set of congruent angles, and I can see one set of opposite congruent angles. I can see that it's not going to be those two angles. Obviously, those are not equal to each other, so it must be D and F that are my congruent angles. The other way that I would know this is find your sides that don't match. For example, this has, or what I mean is that side has one tick mark, that side has two tick marks on it, so those are the two sides that don't match. The angle in between those two are going to be the angles that are congruent to each other. So here's what I know. I know that those two angles are equal to each other. I know that altogether these four angles need to add up to 360 degrees, because in a quadrilateral that's what the four angles will always add up to. So let's try this. Let's take 360 and let's subtract the two angles that we have. So subtract the 124 and subtract the 80. I'm left with 156 degrees. Well, that 156 degrees needs to be evenly split between those two angles, because I know that those two are going to be congruent. That's one of our properties of the kite. So let's take that 156 degrees and let's divide that by 2, and we'll come up with 78. 78 degrees must be the two missing angles, and if I want to check that out, add 78 to itself, because we have two of those, and then add 80, add 124, and you should come up with 360. And then last up, let's find the missing side lengths of the kite when all we know are the diagonal lengths. If you remember what we did with a rhombus, this problem will be very, very familiar to you. One property that we have a kite involving diagonals are that diagonals are perpendicular to each other, meaning I've got a right angle formed, and what's going to be more useful for us is I have a right triangle that's formed. So let's go ahead and find this missing side. I'm just going to call it X. I can see that that would be the hypotenuse of this right triangle, so using Pythagorean theorem, just like we did for a rhombus, I'm going to set up this equation: 6 squared plus 12 squared has to be equal to x squared. Now, that'll give me one side of the kite. Some of you might be thinking, oh no, I have to do this 4 times. But remember, these two sides are the same length, so I don't need to find that bottom-sided red. It's going to be the same length as what's up top, so I only need to do it once to find side x, and then I will need to do Pythagorean theorem a second time to find, let's call that side y. Those two sides would be the same length, but I'll set up another Pythagorean theorem question, because I've got another right angle, to find that side. And remember, that would be the same length down there. So if I set up in green my second equation, I've got 6 squared plus 4 squared using Pythagorean theorem equals y squared, or whatever you want to call it. So that's all we need to do to find our missing sides. Pay attention to the question. It may say give decimals or an approximate answer, or it may say give an answer in simplified radical form, meaning don't get decimals, do the factor tree and simplify it. So go ahead and finish solving those. If you want to see the work for it or not sure how to do it, just let the video play through. Otherwise, you should be able to solve that on your own. And there are your missing sides of the kite.